History has watched Fairfax County grow from a farm-rich rural community to a suburban high-tech economic center. Route 7 in northern Fairfax County illustrates this tremendous change. At the Beltway, modern-day Tyson's Corner is an office and shopping mecca. But just a few miles west on Route 7, a glimpse into the old Fairfax has been preserved in order for us to learn and appreciate the changes that have taken place in our community. Colvin Run Mill, a Virginia landmark listed on the National Register of Historic Places, stands on the old Leesburg-Alexandria Turnpike that was once a major transportation artery, linking the agricultural Shenandoah Valley with the busy maritime port and market at Alexandria. Today, the site encompasses 35 acres, including land across Route 7, leading to Colvin Run. It's believed that the site of the mill was chosen because of three factors: the good water source, a large stand of white oak trees for building the mill, and the proximity to the turnpike. Who built the mill and when have been lost to time, but it is documented that in 1811, Philip Carper bought the grist mill. By 1883, Addison Millard from Frederick County, Maryland, bought Colvin Run Mill. He lived in the miller's house on the site with his wife Emma and their 20 children. The Millard family, first Addison, then his widow, and lastly 2 of their sons, owned and operated the mill until 1934. In 1965, the Fairfax County Park Authority acquired Colvin Run Mill and began a much-needed full-scale restoration of the property. The milling operations are closely modeled on the technology developed by Oliver Evans. His automated system, outlined in his 1794 book, The Young Millwright and Miller's Guide, revolutionized milling in late 18th century America. Open to the public in 1972, Colvin Run Mill now stands as an award-winning masterpiece of restoration craftsmanship, the work of many who have quite literally recreated the past. One of the first projects in the restoration was the building of a mill race, because in 1941 the turnpike was relocated and the mill's water source diverted. The mill race directs water onto modern Route 7 in a tunnel or culvert 100 feet long. The water channels into the flume, where the miller could regulate the flow to the water wheel with a flywheel from a Dutch door in the mill. Colvin Run's overshot water wheel has become a familiar landmark for commuters and travelers along Route 7. It is 20 feet in diameter and can produce 26 horsepower. Each of the 60 buckets holds about 15 gallons, or about 125 pounds of water. The water wheel is built of white oak, while the banding is made of redwood. Over 3/4 of the mill was restored to recreate its presumed appearance during its earliest period. The mill's original brickwork was of poor quality. The walls were built of locally made brick, probably by indentured servants or slaves. The best display of original brickwork is on the front of the mill. Just inside the door is the beam scale, which was used to weigh the grain. It holds 15 bushels, or about 900 pounds of wheat. A hole in the bottom of the scale sits above an opening in the floor. Once weighed, the grain funnels to the basement to be stored in bins called garners. The miller's office, located next to the beam scale, houses the only fireplace and has the only interior door. Because of the danger of flour dust catching fire and exploding, the office was shut off from the rest of the mill when the fireplace was in use. A grain elevator, powered by the water wheel, consists of small scoops attached to a looped leather strap. It brought the grain from the basement to a floor above the main level, where it was cleaned. The elevator could move up to 300 bushels of grain an hour. The grain funnels down to the main level into a hopper. The miller controls the grain flow with a lever called a shoe. The rotating damsel hits the shoe, causing grain to disperse into the eye of the stone. The grinding stones consist of the bed stone, which is stationary, and the runner stone, which revolves about 100 to 150 rotations per minute. They are French burr stones, weighing from 1,800 to 3,600 pounds each. The gap between the stones can be changed for different grains, such as corn, wheat, and buckwheat, and for the desired degree of fineness. If the stones are too close together, they will spark or become too hot, and a burning odor fills the air. The miller had to keep his nose to the grindstone to make sure his grain was not ruined. Occasionally the stones need maintenance work. A stone crane lifts and moves the stone so the miller could dress or sharpen the millstones with a mill pick. The grooves or burrows are where the grains are actually cut during the grinding process. Centrifugal force of the runner stone cuts the grain in half and shoots it outward. The hoop around the stones keeps the ground grain from scattering onto the floor and directs it into a hole in the bedstone. The ground grain then drops through a chute in the floor to the basement into the shaker, which sifts and separates it into different products. The grain elevator brought the ground grain upstairs to the top level of the mill. As with everything else in the mill, the water wheel and gears move the mechanics of the hopper boy, which raked out clumps and dried the flour before being sifted. Gravity takes the grain down a level through an opening in the hopper boy and in the floor to the bolting chest. In the bolting chest, there are two hexagonal reels, each with one end elevated above the other, through which the flour passes. The bolting silk covering the reels comes in different meshes or densities to produce different grades of flour. The Archimedean screws move flour horizontally in the chest to a chute leading to packing barrels on the first floor. A mill could produce 3 grades of flour: superfine, tailings or middlings, and shorts of bran or ship stuff, all from one grinding. Of course, the entire milling process centers on the water wheel's motion to move the various pieces of machinery. But the gears are the nerve center inside the building. They are located in the basement. Most of the gear system is made of white oak, a very hard and non-porous wood. The cogs or gear teeth are rock maple, which is more flexible. The greater face gear is attached to the axle of the water wheel. It is the main gear from which the other gears take power. This gear engages the vertical drive shaft, enabling operations of the machines on the upper levels of the mill. The wallower or trundle gears have round rods instead of gear teeth. They change the direction and increase the speed of the motion. The lesser face gear is a smaller cog gear that moves the smaller trundle gear. Also called the lantern gear, the smaller trundle powers both the runner stone and the shaker assembly. All of these wooden gears have a life expectancy of 10 to 20 years. Today, the flour ground at the mill is for sale in the early 20th century general store located on site. The store was originally across the road from the mill, but was moved in the early 1970s to save it from destruction. Tickets for site tours and souvenirs are also available. At the core of any community is the people's continuing need for food, clothing, and shelter. Changes in how these needs are met are often brought by changes in technology. By focusing on the mill's water wheel and its importance to the Colvin Run community in years past, we can better understand how today's Fairfax County community has evolved and how it will continue to grow and change far into the 21st century.